Remember the last video how I was talking about, potentially it's getting warmer out, we might be able to take the BMW out for a video this week? Well, it snowed. Like a lot. How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Today's video, I'm going to answer a question that I know a lot of people are asking, whether you should be able to buy a Mustang and drive it for the winter. I made a video similar to this, but when I did make the video, I didn't have too much experience with the car. I had the car for probably a week and a half max, and it was my first time driving in the snow. I've driven this car for over a year now, so I have a little bit more experience, and I want to redo the video and answer the question of, is it a good idea to own this car in the snow or not? So let's take it out on a little drive. Just to preface one thing, this car does not have snow tires of any kind. These are all season tires that come from factory, unless you have a performance pack. If you have a performance pack Mustang, you are going to get performance tires, so they're not going to be the best for the snow, but these do decent. We'll talk more about that in a second, but let's start it up and take it out. So that's what happens when you don't have traction on. But let's go out, turn traction back on, and go drive like a normal person, huh? So one thing is for sure, this car does have some pretty decent tires on it compared to what the performance packs will. The performance pack cars are going to have some serious grippy tires for when they get super hot, super warm, and have some tarmac to grip onto, while these are all season tires, more suited to weather conditions like rain and snow. Now this car also does have a couple different modes. It has the normal mode as well as it has a snow and ice mode. You flick this toggle here if you guys can see it, and it will take you onto the different modes. You can select normal, sport plus, track, drag strip, and snow wet. In normal mode, when driving in the snow, you might have a little bit of some problems with the car. When you're in snow and ice, it does limit the traction a whole lot better than what it does when you're driving without it. So now that we get those couple things out of the way, how does it handle in a snowy condition on some icy roads or some snowier roads? If you guys are hearing that, the car pops a little bit when it's cold. So let's answer the question of, is it a good car for the snow? Well, yes and no, and let me explain why. First of all, in normal mode, the car is going to want to step out on itself. The car is going to want to spin if you do give it a little gas, right? The car does do a good job of limiting the traction, but if you're someone who is a little bit heavier on the pedal, the car's going to let you spin a little bit. I'd say the car lets you get up to about 15 degrees of drift before it really decides to correct itself, because it is a sports car at the end of the day. It does want to let you have a little bit of fun behind the wheel. If you guys remember the video I did where I did the POV drive whenever on the roundabout, the car stepped out and it didn't reel itself in until I got pretty sideways. But when it did reel itself in, it did it in a very aggressive manner, cut all power. The car was about to skid out of control if I didn't reel it back in, and the car did it itself. It automatically cut all power, and before the momentum could swing one way, it just pulled itself, cut the power, and just straightened the car back out, basically. And it does the same in the snow. But the problem with snow is, even though it cuts the power, once you're sliding and you have a little bit of momentum, it's not like the tarmac, where the tarmac is going to reel you back in. The snow will let you keep sliding and you can lose the rear end. In snow and ice mode, it doesn't really allow that little bit of step out, I guess. It doesn't allow the car to step out whatsoever. And it does pretty well in the snow, in the ice, as long as you have the ability to control the car. Now back to what I was saying about the car being not the best for the snow and ice in wintertime, because it does have a downside. It is still a rear-wheel drive V8 monster. The car wants to step out, And when there's fresh snow, fresh ice on the ground, fresh slush on the ground, you're gonna have problems with hydroplaning, with some of the wetness, like the slush and water on the road, because again, it is still a low rear-wheel drive sports car. I'm gonna keep saying that because that's what it is, and it's pretty much a monster to drive. But at the same time, it still is a tamed monster to an extent. I will put this in real quick. If you're not someone who has a lot of experience driving in the snow, or not someone who has a lot of experience driving sports cars, I would suggest you drive a sports car in the summertime when you're supposed to be driving them. And number two, you get some experience driving in the snow for at least a year or two without driving a sports car in the snow. You can do it, but just know you're always running that little bit of risk not knowing how snow can react with your car. Because driving in snow and ice, it's something that you can only get from experience and get the feel of driving it with knowing how it's going to react. So there's not much you can do other than driving in snow and ice. So going back to the part where the car isn't a good car for the snow, it's got a lot of power. It's still rear-wheel drive. The car with fresh snow on the ground is going to want to step out, kick out, and it's dangerous with realistically any car driving with fresh snow on the ground and a lot of snow coming down. But with a rear-wheel drive car compared to a front-wheel drive car, front-wheel drive is going to be pulling the car, where a rear-wheel drive is going to be pushing the car. What pushing the car means is it's going to be able to swing left and right, and you're going to be able to lose that rear end very easily. And the same thing happens in the Mustang. Even though it is very planted, it has a lot of control even while you're in the snow, it's never going to be as good as a front-wheel drive or an all-wheel drive car. And it being a V8 and having a lot of power, it's even worse than a normal rear-wheel drive car would be. I hope that's kind of making a little bit of sense. You would think twice about driving a Mustang in a fresh snow. Like, it's definitely something you would be like, okay, maybe I should take a different car this day. But that's the risk you do run with buying this car as your only car as a daily. You're gonna want to think twice about it and really consider it. I considered it, and I thought, I want the Mustang. I don't care what happens. I'll drive it through all the conditions, and I'm ready for the sacrifice that I might make for not having the best car for the snow, but being able to drive the Mustang. I definitely recommend it to someone who has the knowledge of how a car reacts in the snow, and also someone who has the knowledge of how a sports car drives and how a sports car will react, because you can put that knowledge together and kind of know and expect to know how the Mustang will react in the snow. I think it is an excellent car for the winter, as long as you be a little careful. And that's pretty much all I have to say. As long as you can be a little careful with this car and be a little restraintful with this car, because it can get sideways, but the traction will kick in. But it's a fun car, it's a great car, and I'm driving it through the winter. And if someone was to ask me, hey, is it really that bad as you might think a Mustang to be driving in the winter, I would tell them, no, honestly, it's not. The car handles pretty well, and overall, I haven't really ever had an issue. Alright, so I parked the Mustang back up. In normal mode, if you don't know the limit of the car, the limit to where, how much it'll let you slip and how slippery it is, it's gonna kick out and you can spin. In ice and snow mode, it does a decent job at limiting the traction, but again, it still has a lot of power, and for a split second, it lets the car spin a little bit. Depending on how fast you're going, that split second, if you're flooring it at a high RPM, you're going to lose traction and it won't be able to recover. Ice and snow mode does do a decent job, a lot better than normal mode. So what I have to say to answer the question, should you or should you not buy a car like this for the snow? I think absolutely, if you really want one of these cars, go out and get it. I did it, all season tires, I had almost no problem driving this car. I would not recommend getting one of these cars for a new driver, whether it's in the snow or not in the snow, but if you've never driven in the snow, even if you are experienced driving a car, I would say get your experience driving in the snow in a different car before you hop into one of these cars. But these newer sports cars do a really good job of being able to be driven in ice and snow. Like I said before, I've driven this car for like a year already. I've had no issues with it whatsoever. This type of snow is literally nothing for this car, and usually the roads aren't going to look like this. The roads are going to look like that. That is no issue. Of course, there's black ice on the ground, which is a problem for any car, but that road right there is not an issue for this car. But I hope you guys did enjoy this video. I hope it made a little bit of sense. That's all I have though. Leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, trying to hit 100,000 subscribers. But other than that, I will see you guys in the next video.